as an old man who lived many, many, many years. Some say he lived over 200 years because he would not die until, it was a blessing that he would not die until he saw the Messiah. And he took this baby Jesus in his hands, and he said this beautiful prayer, which we say at the end of every 40-day blessing, and we also say at the end of Vesper services as well. You'll hear the priest always say, Lord, let now your servant depart in peace according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared before the face of all peoples, a light to enlighten the Gentiles and a glory for your people, Israel. Amen.
You have been listening to iSermon with Father Theodore Paraskevopoulos. For more information on Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church, please visit www.stsconstantineandhelen.com. This has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio. Ancient Faith Radio is brought to you by our listeners with help from Holy Fool Films, currently in pre-production of El Tonto Por Cristo, an Orthodox tale about a holy fool for Christ by award-winning Orthodox writer and director Josh David Jordan. El Tonto Por Cristo needs you. Become an early bird partner by October 1st. Choose investment or a tax-deductible donation at holyfoolfilms.com.
Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, timeless Christianity 24 hours a day.
This is Everyday Orthodox with your host, Elisa Bielatich Davis. We get together on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We're hoping to get to know the members of the body of Christ across all of our various jurisdictions and regions. We may worship in various languages or even on different calendars, but we have so much in common. Come get to know someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ, and as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is October 9th, 2022, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. I'm Elisa Bielatich Davis, and you're listening to Everyday Orthodox. We get together here on Sunday evenings to get to know another everyday Orthodox Christian and to build community in conversation. You know, here in the North America, Orthodoxy is a little fragmented, right? We're divided up into different jurisdictions, and sometimes we worship in different languages, different traditions, on different calendars even. And so I find that, you know, I say this every week, but I find it amazing. I will meet a neighbor or someone in my neighborhood down the road, and it turns out they're Orthodox too, but they go to a different parish, so we've never met because we're running in different circles, right? The Greek or the Antiochian or the Russian or something. So I think it's a beautiful thing to get Orthodox people together, and let's get to know people in all the different jurisdictions, all over the country, all over the continent, all over the world. We'll get to know each other, and that's how we'll build our own kind of Orthodox unity, right? If we really understand each other and we see each other as brothers and sisters in Christ, isn't that the unity that really matters? So I think it's like a grassroots unity project over here. So I'm glad you've joined us, and I hope you'll continue coming back every Sunday night, because I really think it's a lot of fun. I think Orthodox people are fascinating people. You know, we've come from a lot of different places, or we convert to Orthodoxy coming from all sorts of different places and finding our way here through different paths, right? So I don't know, whether you're a cradle Orthodox or convert or a little bit of both, it's always just so interesting. And it seems like everyone's stories are good. They're just good stories. I love them. So you're welcome to join the conversation because we are live tonight. So you can call in anytime. The number is 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Matushka Trudy Richter is right here tonight producing the show and taking your calls. So if you call in, you can talk to the lovely Matushka Trudy, and she'll patch you right through to our guest, who, by the way, is really cool. And in fact, if you just heard the ad before the program, you already know about him because his name is Josh Jordan, and he is directing an upcoming film called El Tonto Por Cristo, which means the Fool for Christ in Spanish. And so it's going to be really neat. It's an upcoming project right now. They're still getting it together, and I can't wait until it's finished. And it's a wonderful film that we can all watch. And I just think it's so exciting that there are so many Orthodox films coming up. So much creativity happening in American Orthodoxy right now. It's been kind of, I don't know, I converted like 20 years ago. There was nothing in English. We had like 3 books and that was it. And now there are books and there are films and there's music. There's just so much and it's beautiful. And so glory to God. And thanks to Josh Jordan, who's a part of that. So that's wonderful. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you Josh Jordan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love this show.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. And of course, as you know, I know your wife, and she's delightful. She's so fun. So it's just delightful to get to
Yes.
know you. And I'm also
Jessica,
excited about.
Jessica's a driving force of the film and my career and just anything I do. If it wasn't for Jessica, I would still be bartending, I think.
See, that's how a good wife should be, frankly. Like, that's marriage, right? We bring out the best in each other. That's so cool. I
Yeah,
love that.
100%.
I love that. All right. So, Josh, tell me, where does your story start? Are you like a native Texan or where were you born?
Yeah, so I'm not a native Texan. I mean, I've been here for since I was 13, but my dad, going back, my dad was a traveling evangelist. So from, my knowledge of what I know of my life is me and my older brother, John Ben, who's a couple years older than me. We were part of my dad's traveling evangelists, not a circus, but it was an event. And we were we had a station wagon and we went to White Saint revivals and we opened these services. We wore 3-piece suits. We sang, and then there was Geraldine and Ricky. Geraldine was a ventriloquist, and Ricky was a puppet. And then she would do the middle part of the service, and then my dad was the preacher, and he would close it down, and we would go on to the next revival. And I remember being a kid thinking that we were so blessed, and that we're so. I thought we were rich because we would we would stay in these motels. I didn't know what a motel. I thought it was something really fancy, but it had ice machines and soda machines. That had a pool, and my dad would count the money on the bed, and there was a TV. And I thought, wow, we're a really wealthy family. And yeah, it's pretty
That's the most
crazy.
amazing answer I think I've ever gotten to that question. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when were you born? Like what years?
I
is
was
this?
I was born in 1976.
Okay. So 10 revivals in the 80s, like the late 80s, early 90s?
Tent revivals, and yeah, it was. I mean, they started when I was still a baby, so I remember getting like the chicken pox in some old lady's home that had doilies everywhere. Like, I experienced life on the road, and I think that's why I really enjoy meeting new people because was just born that way. I was always born into like, a birthday is at some random place, and holidays were in random places. So that's how I was brought up. Yeah.
So did you not really know your extended family well? Like
No, I did.
Yeah.
I did. So home base was I was born in Sikeston, Missouri, and I grew up in Kennett, Missouri. If you're from Missouri, you say Missouri, and it's the home of Sheryl Crow is from Kennett, Missouri, and she, my dad and mom were friends with her parents, which is Bernice and Wendell Crow, and so it's a population of like 1,000 people, and so that was home. Like both of my nannies, they were called nannies for some reason in the South. So Nanny Jordan and Nanny Haywood, they were all from Kennett. So that was home for me. But we traveled around, but we would always like spend some of the main holidays back in Kennett. So it's still home to me, even though now Texas is like home.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I'm speechless. Like I want to ask 100 questions. I don't even know what to ask about that. I love
Go
the
ahead.
idea that you're at like different motels and that feels amazing. Like when I was 10, I spent my 10th birthday in a motel and it was like the greatest thing that ever happened to
Oh
me.
yeah,
It was like, I was like blue
100%.
shag carpet. And I remember my mom's like, oh, that's the worst place in the world. It was terrible. I was like, no, it was amazing. It was like, it had a little, you could put money in the bed and it would massage you. It was great. Like, couldn't
Yeah,
imagine anything fancier.
it's so crazy. I still sleep with a box fan near me because of the sound of that AC unit that's inside the motel. That's
Yep.
how I used to sleep from the age of 0 to the age of like 13. So that humming sound is very like calming and nurturing for me. So I still do that.
Wow. No, so you and
Yeah.
your brother were singing, right? Like you opened the
Yes,
show singing.
correct.
But now, did you
100%.
ever preach? Did you ever
Oh
preach at all? Like, did
no.
you start to pick
I
that up from your dad, or was that just you? That was not for you.
No, what was for me was back then, it was like for me, my dad was he still is a very rad dude. And growing up Southern Baptist and different denominations that we would go speak at, but he would still let us watch TV. And I was brought up on Sesame Street. And I knew for a matter of fact, I was like, I want to do that. I want to do what Jim Henson does. I want to make puppets and be a part of puppetry. And when you would go to these different churches, and a lot of them were larger churches in the Southern Baptist area, they would have a really big Sunday school unit that had puppets. And I remember that's where I would go. And there was a lady who was really nice. She was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she like made me a puppet. My parents still have it. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to create. I want to make things. I want to do things. Because really, if you think about it, growing up at that age, if you didn't live in LA or New York, you weren't a Steven Spielberg or you weren't a Francis Ford Coppola, Mississippi, Alabama, Ohio, Texas, there was no type of like film, because it was film. They shot film back then. And so the closest I could get was like puppetry or acting. So, I was always like Noah or Moses. I grew up that way. That was my intro into the film creative world.
That is very cool. I love that. I love that very much. But it's true, right? Because it's very doable at that time. It's like, okay, I can make a puppet. I can put on this show. I can do all of it myself, as opposed to trying to imagine, leaving for Hollywood and going and working for a studio or something like it was back then. But that's so cool. All right. So what is your dad like? Like, so he's a traveling preacher. Like, what was his
Yes.
personality? Was he kind of larger than life? Was he super charming? What was he like?
Yeah, he is. He actually was a theater major in Kennett, and he was going to go off to NYU. And then my mom had gotten pregnant with my older brother, John Ben. So he stayed in Kennett, and he, provided for the family and was watching a Billy Graham thing on TV and completely changed his life. And he's a phenomenal dude. He's still a great actor, and he's also an author, and he's one of the sweetest people in the world.
Oh, that's neat. That's really neat.
Yes.
And so I imagine going around with the revival I mean, my guess would just be that like in a community, people come out who are already Christian and they come out like sort of for some, like to inject some inspiration and some excitement into their faith life. Is that a good approximation of what that is, or what is a tent revival?
I think so. I mean, I don't think it would work today just because I don't think people would get off their devices to go see something like that, because you can see it on your phone.
Yeah.
But like, there's nothing to do. It's 1979 or it's 1981. Like, being a kid, I would ride around on Saturdays on my bicycle and just try to find pennies and dimes. So if there was an event, there was going to be like refreshments. You're going to get a snack or something, and it's I think it's free entertainment. But also like, there's also the spiritual element, and people, especially in that region. And it's still today. I mean, my cousin lives in Memphis, and I go down there and sometimes I'll see like white tent revivals still happening, which I think is pretty phenomenal. I think it's rad. Yeah. I need to go
That's
check one of
cool.
those out.
So what was it like? Was your dad like a charismatic preacher? Was it like
No, that's what's
healings and
so,
stuff? Because that's always the
no.
classic tent revival, like
Yeah,
from the 20s and 30s, is always like,
it really
and now you'll
is.
walk, son. And like he gets up and
Yeah,
walks. And,
like the Steve Martin movie. What was that
yeah,
called?
yeah,
What was that?
yeah. Oh,
I
I
forget
don't
what it's
remember.
called. I
Yeah, but I
know
know
it's
what
a
you're
great
talking
film.
about.
I need
Yeah,
to
my
revisit that.
grandmother went to a revival like that when she was a kid. She got in trouble from her mom because she was like hollering and stuff. Her mom's like, "Don't you be making fun of them people." But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
my dad was really cool. So we would I remember as a kid asking him like, do we watch TV here? Or do we watch movies, or do we, do we speak in tongues? Like there was things that I didn't know where we were going. So like we would, he would go to Southern Baptist, he would go to Church of God, he would go to Church of Christ, or it would be, you know, a Protestant, or I'm trying to think of the other one, the speaking in tongues. I'm confusing myself.
like Pentecostal
Yeah,
maybe or something like that.
Pentecostal. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so he'd be like, "Hey, we don't watch TV. We don't do this." He was very gentle and loving, but also allowed us. He knew who we were, and he knew my brother loved sports. So we'd watch, sports, and he knew I loved make believe, so he would allow that. But yeah, but he was more of a storyteller. He was very inspired by Billy Graham, so he, would tell stories, and that's probably where I get it.
That's neat. That's really neat.
I
But
know.
I mean, no, I mean it sounds cynical, but it's not, right? Because it's like, listen, you're
I
going to preach
know.
you're going to preach in this community, and you don't want to bring in like, oh yeah, well, we don't do it the way you do it, right? Like you just want to come in and be all positive and be a positive force, right? So it's like you don't want that friction of
Yes.
what does my family do versus what do y'all do. So I mean, in a way, like I'm going church to church, right? Like I've gone around and spoken in churches, and if everybody's wearing a head covering, I put on a head covering. And if they're not,
Right.
I take it off. And it's not like I'm not trying to pretend anything. It just when in Rome, you do what they're doing in Rome, and you don't want to introduce a friction. You just want to be able to come in and speak about Christ and have that go flow uninterrupted. So I think
Yeah.
I think that's not necessarily bad, but it is funny, right? Like,
No, it
no, you
is.
don't watch TV, you do speak in tongues. Like, all right, got it, And then the next place, no, TV's okay here, But it's
Yeah.
true, and
People.
that's not a reflection on
Yes.
y'all. That's a reflection on how weird Christians are that we've got all of our own things in every town, right?
Yeah, I remember like it was never a big deal, but he'd be like, "Hey, you have to wear a T-shirt when you swim at the summer camp." And so I remember like knowing like I didn't go to summer camp. I went to everyone's summer camp. I went to summer camp all summer because we would travel, but it was like, hey, you have to wear a long T-shirt here, or you have to do this here. I have a gazillion stories I could tell you about my summer camps in the evangelical world. And that's maybe another podcast.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I would love that because I never got to go to summer camp. Like my mom was one of those people who's real nervous about me going anywhere. And so I'm just like fascinated with summer camp now. I work in summer camps. I think about it. I love it. But all right. So there you are growing up this way. How was your education? Was it kind of choppy because y'all were moving around? Did that impact you long term or did you like just pick things up? What happened?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what was actually back then there was something that was pretty seamless. It was called ACE. I don't know what the acronym stands for. I'm not really sure. American Christian Education. That's probably what it is. But it was for different types of denominations, mainly Southern Baptist or Church of God, and you could go to an ACE school, and it was the same type of education. So you could drop in. So it wasn't really homeschooled as it was a little bit, but I remember always going to school at different churches, and we would wear. I would have photos of this. I would wear a red shirt that had a tie, a navy blue tie that had an eagle, a Bible, and an American flag on the tie. And
And Americans say they don't like icons, right? But there it is, the
yeah.
eagle and the American flag. There you go.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was a lot of flags in all those schools, and you would be like in a little. It was a cubicle that you were in, and you would just do your ACE. I would fill it out, and you would raise a Christian flag, if you had a question, and
Oh my
someone
gosh.
would come talk to you. And yeah, that was my education until I was 14 years old, until I went to a public school here in Dallas, Texas.
Wow, that is amazing. That's awesome, though. That's fantastic. Well, I'm thinking like back in those same years, because I'm only a couple years older than you, and it was a lot of like SRAs and stuff that were just like these. You just had these reading comprehension exercises and stuff. They just gave you cards, and you just did the questions on the card. So I was like, well, gosh, I guess you could do that anywhere, right? You could just travel around.
Yeah. Did you ever do sword drills?
No,
You know what
what's
sword
that?
drills are?
No, what is
So
that?
yeah, so that's like when you stand up in front of a congregation or a group of people or summer camp, and you hold a Bible, and then they say like Deuteronomy, they say the verse, and the first person to get that, to open it up and read it, wins. So
Yes,
like
my
I wasn't
husband did those.
I
I
wasn't
never had
allowed
to
to
do
do
those.
that.
My husband did them growing up in Texas at Christian schools, and he was good at it. He can tell. He's like, oh yeah, this is. You can tell how thick the Bible is. He can look and tell you where the books are going to be. And I always laugh. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's that good of a skill, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I wasn't
But
allowed to like participate as a preacher's kid, so
oh, that's kind of unfair.
I
Do you
know.
think you would have just killed it as a preacher's kid, or do you feel like,
I,
because you were traveling around and having fun, so it's a little different. You didn't have
I
like
think I
one
still
congregation. Did you have that same problem that preachers' kids have, of like everybody expects you to be so much better
Oh, of
at church stuff?
course.
And yeah,
Yeah, when we settled in when I was 13 or 14 years old. I'm not really good with time and space, really, so I forget like where I was and when I was. Um, but we ended up in Dallas, Texas. There was something that happened at a church here in Dallas. My dad was just speaking at, that the pastor had to go away, and they asked my dad to sub, and then he ended up being the main pastor here in Dallas. And so yeah, that was the first time that I was like a preacher's kid. So that was all during high school, which is like the worst time to be a preacher's kid.
right,
It's high school.
exactly,
And everyone's looking
exactly
at you.
right.
It's, oh my
Oh
gosh, are you
man.
kidding me? Yeah.
So were you at like a Christian high school in Dallas?
Okay. So I was, but before that, my brother, I have an older brother who's he's a really talented baseball player, and he was like the good preacher kid. And I went in as my freshman year, and at this private school, and they were like, "Oh, you're little John, you're little Jordan," and I was like, "I don't think I like this too much. I don't think I like being little Jordan." So I left. My dad was at that point traveling again as an evangelist, and I left that Christian school, which I had a full ride at, and I went to the first public school here in Dallas called Name and Forest that had a brand new theater program, and I wanted to do theater, and so I left, and I was a freshman, and I did theater by myself. I knew no one. I didn't know anybody at that school. It was a brand new theater, and I wanted to be an actor, so that's what I did. I left all of that,
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's cool. That's huge.
and my
All
parents
right.
let me, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think especially, among sort of very strict Christians, sometimes that can be a problem, where they're like, theater, that's not good. But your dad was a theater guy, so he understood it,
Yeah,
I guess.
I
Oh,
think
that's
so.
neat. That's really neat. Okay. Well, cool. All right. So what'd you end up doing after high school then?
So after high school, oh, you're bringing me back now. I'm gonna have to like research my brain. Um, Yeah, so after high school, I went back to my parents moved back to Missouri and to Kennett, and I followed them back there because Dallas is a huge city at that time. This is pre-internet, this is pre-cell phone, and you kind of had to follow the family, just for stability. So I went back and I went to a community college, and I got a full ride, which is weird saying a full ride at a community college, but I did because I a program that didn't. I kind of invented a theater program that did not exist, and so I started doing theater because all my friends went to the University of Missouri, but I couldn't get in because my grades weren't that great. So I had to wait a year, and so I stayed in the Boot Hill, Missouri, and did theater, and then I went to University of Missouri doing theater. And that was a great experience. And then I came back to Dallas for something, and I auditioned for a part and I got into the Katy Acting Studios here in Dallas. So I left University of Missouri with not too much to go from graduating, which I probably should have. I think I read somewhere that Brad Pitt left with like a semester left, and I was like, so am I. But
not realizing, fine, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Brad Pitt's from Missouri, so am I. This is gonna be great. It's gonna work out just like Brad Pitt.
That's right.
Yeah. See, this is pre-internet. This is pre-internet. I should have known better.
Right. Well, I mean, even with the internet, I don't know that kids today are all that much cleverer, so it's all right. But so when you're doing theater and you're thinking of yourself though as an actor and not a director, right? Like, so were you were thinking of yourself as cultivating like the craft of performing, and so so then you're in Dallas. Now you're acting in Dallas. Were you thinking you would go to Los Angeles or New York or something? Were you thinking like live theater? Were you thinking movies? If I had asked you on that day when you left Missouri and went to Texas to go act in Dallas, what would you have said was like the golden path ahead of you?
You know, what's crazy is that Dallas at that time was like, it was kind of hitting. Like there was Walker, Texas Ranger. There was a lot of things being filmed in Dallas, and Dallas was the new hub. There's a whole like little Hollywood that's in Dallas. It's called Las Colinas. Films like RoboCop were being filmed here. There's a lot of things happening. And the place that I was at, Katy Studios, I auditioned for a lot of
you know what?
things.
There's something funny going.
Ranger, I was actually.
There you go. You know, you're coming in and out all of a sudden.
Oh, am I?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
But now you're perfectly clear. Whatever you're doing, don't move. That's perfect.
Okay. I'll stay right here.
You were just saying you're at Katy Studios in Las Colinas.
Yeah.
And that's right. There were I forgot that I lived in Dallas for a while. I forgot about that. Las Colinas is like the movie capital of Dallas, sort of.
It really was. And I was in Katy Studios and I was in a class and they came and said, "Hey, Josh, you want to come audition for this?" I said, "What is it?" They said, "Just read the lines." And it turned out it was for Barney. And the whole, I know that sounds crazy.
No, but it's filmed in Dallas. I knew people in Barney.
Yeah.
Like my kids went to preschool with the children of people who were dinosaurs on Barney.
And so the guy who was the main Barney, his contract was up and there was negotiations, and I didn't know that I was a part of this, but they were like, "Hey, you want to audition for this?" I was I'm 6'2". I could do the voice, and I did one episode, and then he re-signed his contract, and I was never Barney.
Wow. You know what? I actually remember this. Like this was a thing in Dallas back in the day. I remember this conversation that like Barney was leaving. No, he is not leaving. He is back.
Yes.
There you go. Oh,
I was a part of that.
You were almost the new Barney for an extended period of time.
Oh,
you were Barney just long enough to know how.
I think I was Barney just enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it pays the bills, right? But it's kind of not the. And you did like puppets, and it's like a puppet. It's like
full
that.
Circle.
Yeah, it is. It was maybe necessary so that you could complete that and move on to the next step.
I think so.
So what came next? What were you doing?
So right after that, I got a part in a film called The Prodigy, which was, I think, one of the highest production films to ever come through Dallas. It was like a $2.5 million film. And I got a small part in that. I died in the first 20 minutes. I remember going to the premiere, and after I died, all my friends were like, "Should we head out? Should we leave?" Like, you just died. But, it was one of those things. I did a lot of auditions driving to Austin back and forth. I did a Whataburger commercial. I did some stuff for Wingstop with Troy Aikman. And I remember my agent, this was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, was I went down to Austin. I was bartending, so I was getting off at like 3 a.m. I would drive to Austin all night and get there at 8 for an audition. And I walked in for a Dell commercial, and I was the only non-Asian person in the room. And I realized either I'm not getting this or I'm 100% getting this. And I didn't get it.
Which means your agent sent you to an audition that you totally knew was not for you.
Yeah, I think it was just like more like, just they just send everybody to everything. And I was trying to figure
Yeah.
out like, what am I doing? Like I want to tell stories, but I'm not able to do that with acting because you're not really in control. And then one night I was watching Netflix and I was trying to find something like we all do. We spend an hour before and then we just end up going to bed. And my wife, she goes, "What are you trying to find?" I was like, "I'm trying to find a movie about like a country singer who doesn't make it. Like we see the film about the country singer who makes it and they play the big anthems and, all is well. Or it's the story about the old guy who, has a problem with alcohol and he falls and then he remakes it." I was like, well, how about the country singer who doesn't make it? And Jess looks at me and she goes, "Well, maybe you should make it." And I was like, it was like that scene in Rocky almost to me when she leans forward and she's like, "Go get him, Rocky." It was like that moment for me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I should make it. And then, then I wrote This Role Won't Break, which is about one of my dear friends, Greg Schrader.
That's so cool. Well, so what is it about though? Like, what's the story essentially?
That's the story. It's
It
about
is.
waking up at, it's a 100%. It's about waking up at the age of 40 something and realizing all the work that you've done. You're not a huge star. What do? Do you quit and get a job? How do you get a job? Or do you keep pressing on and maybe hopefully one day you become a legend? And
Wow.
that's what the film's about. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a deep dive. It's a deep dive into maybe you're making your own legacy as you speak. So that's the whole point of the film.
That. I love that. That's beautiful. One, I think that's so poignant, like just sort of that moment in life when you're looking and it's like, oh, this isn't going where I wanted it to go. Is it going somewhere good enough, or do I need to change paths? Like that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
It's kind of it's the in between. It's like we're all sold on like the guy who makes it or the person who's going to make it, but like I think all of us, it's like we're trying to make it, and how do you navigate that? So that's what This Role Won't Break's about. And it's free on Amazon Prime if people want to. Or I think it's free everywhere. I think it's free everywhere if people want to watch it.
Excellent. Good deal. I'll put a link on our Facebook page too.
Thanks.
In case people can't find it, we'll put it up there. But all right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to be right back with Josh Jordan. And that's it. We're just going to be right back. You can call. I know it was. I want to tell you can call in if you like. 1-855-AF Radio. That's 1-855-237-2346. We'll be right back.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF Radio.
Hi, I'm Elisa Bielatich Davis, host of the Sunday night live call-in show, Everyday Orthodox. My program's a little unique among the other AFR live show offerings because I focus on average Orthodox Christians who nevertheless have a profound impact on their parishes, their families, and their communities. It's so inspiring to hear how God works in the lives of normal, everyday people, and I love sharing their stories with you. Most likely, you're also an everyday Orthodox sojourner who's striving to serve the Lord in small, unassuming ways. Did you know that you're the same sort of person who keeps Ancient Faith Radio running and programs like mine on the air? It's true. AFR is entirely sustained by ordinary listeners who express their appreciation for the station through humble monetary gifts of $50 or $100, sometimes even just $5 or $10. Every little bit helps, and without such support, Ancient Faith Radio would cease to exist. Would you please take a moment right now to add your contribution to those of the other faithful AFR fans who help keep such shows as Everyday Orthodox on the air? It's an easy process. Just go to ancientfaith.com and click on Donate in the upper right-hand corner. Be a participant. Be a partner. Become an Ancient Faith Radio donor today. Thanks in advance for your generosity.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elisa.
Welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. We're here tonight with Josh Jordan. Josh, I have a question. Do you go by Josh David or by just Josh? Because your brother goes by his middle name too, right? So how about you?
Yeah, I think just like for media stuff, I go by Josh David Jordan. I think everyone just calls me Josh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just thought I'd check and make sure. I don't want to be
Yeah,
messing it
I
up.
appreciate that. No, that's all good.
But so we were just talking about your first film, which was This World Won't Break. And I put a link up, y'all, on the Facebook page, just in case if you want to check that out. Honestly, I think I'm going to because it looks really good, Josh.
Oh,
It looks awesome.
Thanks.
So what was
Oh,
that
thanks.
process like to make your first film? Like, how do you go from sitting in the living room with Jess, like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to do that, to like, okay, here's a film. It's finished and it's lovely and it's online and you can see it.
Yeah, what's crazy is I always say Mark Duplass said something. He's an independent filmmaker, and he said the cavalry's not going to show up. I remember him saying that about independent film. He said that at South by Southwest, which was he gave a speaker. He was a speaker, and he was supposed to speak about how you make films. And he was like, the cavalry's not going to show up, so you're going to have to make your own film. And so I took that to heart, and he was right. Like, it's hard to make your first feature film because I went to investors. I went to the top of Bank of America. I went to the top of places that I can't really talk about because I don't want to say people's names. And they all said, like, well, what's your first feature film? And I didn't have one. I had music videos that were on Rolling Stone, music videos that were everywhere, and short films. But they wanted to see my first feature film. And I knew that I needed to make my first feature film. And luckily enough, I have a great supporting partner in Jessica Jordan. And so we buckled down and we made This World Won't Break for only $36,000. And
Nice.
it went across the world. I mean, it was in Australia. We went to Glasgow, went to London. We buckled down, and I did everything. This is not like tooting my own horn, because a lot of times people would rather pay for things, and instead I didn't have any money, so I had to do it all. I had to. One of the main stars of the movie is an old, broken down, brown, rusted El Camino. And I would have to drive that to set, get an Uber, go back and get the rental van that had all the equipment and craft services, and go get coffee, and then drive that to set and give everyone coffee, and then drive back. And it was crazy. There was a moment. I had a lot of really great people that I was surrounded by, like Chris Burke, who's my cinematographer. I remember saying, like, there was a scene, I go, action, and I whispered in his ear, I'm going to get everyone cheeseburgers. I'll be right back. And he shot the scene, and it's what had to happen. And that's how I made This World Won't Break. It was a lot of trust. I think I slept like 2 hours a day for a couple months.
I bet. Well, and it's funny because when you say, like, I did all the different things, it's like, no, really, like all the grunt rolls and the higher rolls.
Yeah, and
really,
my oldest,
I got the coffee, I got the cheeseburgers, I'm driving the car.
And then my
awesome.
oldest son, Julian Jordan, he edited the film as well with me. So I think he was
nice.
like 17 at the time. Now he's 21, and he's going to be working on this El Tonto Por Cristo as, like, we're doing it correctly this time. He'll be importing all the footage daily and stuff like that, so we can see dailies.
Oh, excellent. So you're not trying to do it at the end. Like, that's hard.
No,
That's very hard.
that was dangerous. I had the film on like random hard drives all over the place. I was like, do not do that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You could have lost whole sections of it and just had to figure it out. Yeah.
I just had to keep saying, Lord have mercy. And we brought our icon of Saint Genesius everywhere we went. I just kept saying, Lord have mercy.
Oh, I love that. So, and that's one thing we didn't talk about. How did you go from being like this traveling preacher's kid to being Orthodox?
Yeah.
Where did that happen in the past?
That's a great question. So my brother-in-law, Dan, was actually becoming Orthodox, and my wife had gone to visit when her grandfather was passing away, and she was talking to me about it, and it just was sort of in my world, it was kind of noise, and I was like, she's like, it's not like Catholicism, because we were trying to figure out, like, we were evangelical when the boys were young. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just too much. A lot of stuff happened. And so my wife was like, well, let's look at, Catholic churches. I'm like, all right, that sounds great. And my brother-in-law was a catechumen and was becoming Orthodox. I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what it was. And I was watching the Golden Globes, and Jonathan Jackson won the Emmy for, maybe it was the Emmys, and he won for Nashville, a show that he was on. And he thanked his wife and his kids and his agents, and he talked about different things in the industry. And then he said, I would like to thank all the monks that continuously pray on Mount Athos for all of us. And I was like, what? Monks on Mount Athos?
Yeah. The next day, every Orthodox crowd was like, what did Jonathan Jackson say last night? How does he know about Mount Athos? What's going on?
And so that was my deep dive. It was a different deep dive than obviously my wife's was. And then
but he's speaking to you, like, coming at you from your wife is coming at you from like family and funerals, and there's this. It's so different than to like have somebody speak to you through film making, right? Like acting.
For me,
to hear it come from that side of your life is like, whoa, I'm surrounded.
And for me, I'm like, oh, another denomination? Oh, what's like, what does that mean? How do I dress up for that one? What costume change?
Do we speak in tongues? Can I wear a T-shirt? What do I do? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like another set of rules.
And then the great thing about Orthodoxy, it's like, Pascha, the celebration of Pascha. For me, it was like, I was like, oh, are you kidding? This celebration where monks are having wine. It's like, and the great thing for me is like, I was lucky enough. So my godfather is Father John here at St. Seraphim.
Nice.
Yeah. And
so I just want to say to the audience, y'all are at St. Seraphim OCA Cathedral in Dallas, which was the home of Blessed Dimitri of blessed memory, Vladika.
Yes, blessed memory, yes.
And he's there in the chapel now. His his incorrupt remains there in the chapel. So glory to God, a saint from Dallas. Not yet officially, but we have a native Texan saint, and you're right there in his home. Like, that's awesome.
I filmed all of that too. I filmed the whole the burial inside the cathedral. Yeah, I have unseen footage of all of that. I know. I'm excited.
We need so much evidence of it. Someday it's going to be really needed. Someday it's going to be really important stuff. So
so
neat.
Father John, I had a question because I was like, I was grown up so like, the world is only 6,000 years old, and there's a lot of confusing things being Protestant. And I remember talking to Father John and asking him a question about like, how old's the world, and him talking about Orthodoxy is really close with science. And I asked a certain question. He goes, that's a mystery. We won't know. We won't know until we pass. And he goes, that's a mystery. It's a good question. And I remember him saying that, and he wasn't giving me like a BS answer of something that was something that he needed to do politically or whatever. It was just, he didn't know. It's a mystery. Therefore, it is a mystery. And that was beautiful to me. The beautiful thing of things being a mystery. And I was like, oh, you got me, man. Like,
well, when you come out of a tradition where it's like you're supposed to be so sure of everything, and like you prove you're a good Christian by saying, I know the world is 6,000 years old, right? And it's like, there's a part of you that knows it might not be, and it probably isn't. But like, to be a good Christian, you have to be sure. And it's like to suddenly walk in somewhere where it's like, everybody relax. It's okay not to know. Like, you're not supposed to know. It just, like that's so true. It's so true to our actual experience. It's so beautiful. I love that. Okay. So, all right. So I want to talk about the new film that you're working on, that you're getting started here, because I just think it's so cool. And that's actually how I ended up getting in touch with you in the first place, because I was very interested in El Tonto Por Cristo. So what happened? So you're
Yeah.
making, like, yeah, I hate the word secular. You're making secular films. That's not really true. You're making films that are going to say all kinds of beautiful things about human nature and about the
Mm.
human spirit. And so, I mean, nothing's secular if you're making beautiful art. I don't know if real art can be secular, but but what is this? Like, how are you suddenly you're like, I'm going to make an Orthodox movie? What are you doing?
Yeah. What am I doing? That's a great question. I ask myself that all the time. What am I doing? So looking back, so we've been Orthodox for 9 years. We were catechumen almost 10 years ago. I believe Jess is probably saying that's not the right time frame, but I'm not really sure. And I remember watching things and like trying to find stuff and being like, where's some great films on this? And I would touch on some things, and not saying anything that I've seen is not good or not great. I just knew that, like, I'm a cinephile. I have a membership to the Criterion channel, and that's what I dive into. And I was like, there needs to be a movie about Orthodoxy that was going to be on the Criterion channel. That's like my hope and dream, correct? And so I was like, well, here we go. Let's do this. Because I have a couple of films that were in the line that I want to make. And then, those were a little bit more expensive. And not that this film doesn't cost money, it does. And then I was like, what if there was a film about an Orthodox monk who's a fool for Christ on the coast of Texas? And I just dove into it. And I'm really, really, really excited about it. I think people who are Orthodox are going to be blown away. And I think that people who are not Orthodox are going to want to know what Orthodoxy is. And me being brought up in the evangelical world, I think this is my opportunity to evangelize in not an evangelical sense, just more in a cinematic world of how amazing the Orthodox Church is. And so that's the film, and that's what's happening. I could dive more into what the film's about if you want me to.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Absolutely. Because I'm fascinated. I love the idea. I did not realize that it was going to be set in Texas, which I think is super neat. And there's something magical about the concept of the holy fool, right? Like this person who behaves as if they're crazy, as if they're just completely out there, because it gives them this freedom to speak about Christ in a way where, like, they don't have to worry about how people are going to react. And so it's always this, I love the idea of the holy fool, but also I love, as you're talking about, being able to speak to people who are not yet Orthodox or who don't know about Orthodoxy. The holy fool, that's who he is. He's the one who can speak to everybody because he doesn't have to worry about what he's saying. So that's the right vehicle. Like, that's so beautiful. So how did you, tell me more about it. Tell me all about it.
So as a filmmaker, I wanted to make all my films here in Texas. And so obviously I made one, this Roll and Break. And then the next one was going to be something else, which we'll find out later, which is my third film. But this one really came into place because it's about a fool for Christ. And I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 in October. And, I think for the first time in my entire life, I think about not just being young and, my kids are 21 and 18, which sometimes I feel like I still am. I feel like my thought process, I feel like I'm going to live forever. I'm 21, but I'm actually 45. And I have a friend who is the creative director of the Okra House Theater here in Dallas, Texas. And he actually is in this Roll and Break. He plays the father of the main lead. And I looked at Matt and I was like, oh man, he looks like a monk because he has a beard and long hair. And I was like, that's the film. What if there was a fool for Christ and he wasn't like, how if you're Orthodox, you go inside the cathedral, if you're in divine liturgy, and it's a lot of, it seems like everyone knows what they're doing. It's, it's candles, it's incense, and people, it's very, I'm not really sure what word I'm looking for here, but
it's orderly.
What if
right? And everything's in its place.
Yes, it's orderly in its place. And then my friend Matthew Posey, who's the creative director of the Okra House Theater, he makes the most beautiful plays. He's done, I think, 25 original plays, and I've had the chance to be a part of them. And he told me one time he doesn't ever cast for anything. He'll call you on the phone and say, "Hey, Josh, are you available in October?" I'll be like, "I think so." He goes, "Oh, I'm writing something for you," and then you just go and you perform that part, and then you walk away. And I'm like, it's so magical. I feel like sometimes when I read about the Fools for Christ, it's almost in the same aspect of like, they're not on the same wavelength as the rest of us. They're walking in their own path and they're just following Christ. And I was like, what if I could put all of that together, use Matthew Posey, who I know understands what that world is. He actually went to seminary, Matthew Posey, and I wrote a film about a fool for Christ on the coast of Texas, and it's half Spanish, it's half English, and we're going to call it El Tonto Por Cristo. And the stories that unfold, it takes place at this tiny little monastery. And I'm really excited about that. Did that make sense at all? I'm not sure if it did.
It did. It
Okay.
did. It absolutely did. And I love the whole idea of it. And then I have a question because I was thinking about this just before the show, right? We heard this promo where Bobby Maddox is like, "Hey, check out El Tonto Por Cristo." And he said you can invest until October 1st. Can you still invest? Did you guys
Yes.
open it a little longer?
Okay, so that was the actual early bird investing, which we actually just extended that. And so there's two ways that people can be involved in El Tonto Por Cristo, which is, I think, maybe the first Orthodox film that's being filmed in Texas about a fool for Christ. I think that's pretty awesome. You can do that through our WeFunder, and it's basically if you invest, you get 130% back on your investment of the film, and then you get a percentage of the life of the film. And also there is the you can invest, or I'm sorry, you can donate through our 5013C, which is through Film Independent, and it's a tax-free deductible donation, so it's a tax write-off.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, so that's
Yeah.
neat. So you can either invest or you could just donate but either way, to be a part of it and to help make sure that it happens. And I think it's fantastic. And another thing I noticed about it, you have a composer on there named Michael Paraskevas, and he's done like
Yes.
big movies, right? Like Hawkeye and Frozen and Ant-Man and the Wasp and all
Yes.
these things. Is he Orthodox, Paraskevas, or is that
Yeah.
just a coincidence?
No, his dad is Nick Paraskevas, who is the choir at the at St. Seraphim. He has been there for.
Cool. Well, how
I'm not
nice
sure
to
how.
get together,
I'm not sure.
like
Yeah.
to get together Orthodox artists in this way, right? Like not just that it's Orthodox subject matter or an Orthodox director, but really like you're working with a lot of people who come from inside and who already
Yeah.
understand it.
And Michael scored the entire "This World Won't Break" film as well.
Oh, neat.
My
Neat.
first film. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So at this point, you've filmed a trailer, right? And so what do you do? Do you have to like, I don't know how this works. Do you have to wait to get funding before you can like go all in and then you film the whole thing? Or how does this work?
Correct. Yes. So that's a proof of concept. And so basically it's for people to see like what the film's going to look like. So we're shooting this in black and white. We're using native instruments from monasteries as the soundtrack. I'm working with Michael on that. And so if you watch the proof of concept, you can feel what the film's about. And basically, me and Jess say this. So far, we've raised almost $50,000 for the film. If only 1,000 Orthodox or anyone or anybody or any person
Right.
donated or invested. So the investment part is you're investing, you're going to get it back. And then you could be a producer on the film. And then you get 30% back on that. But if 1,000 people just gave $100, this film would be greenlit, and we would go into production in February, and we would make the first Texas Southern Orthodox film, and that's really exciting to me.
Well,
I
and
know.
it's still in like the early, like 10 or 15 American Orthodox films at all, right? Like there hasn't been enough of it, but but I also see that it just explodes. You and I were talking earlier about Bisenfest. And I don't know,
Right.
if our listeners, if you're familiar with this, but this is like an annual online, what's the word, festival, film
Yes, correct.
festival
Film
of
festival.
Orthodox
Yeah.
films. Yeah. And so you
Yeah.
can
Only
just
Orthodox
you
films. Yeah.
pay. Yeah, it's so cool. You
Yes.
pay for it and you get to stream all of these Orthodox films on Vimeo for the
Right.
2-week period. And you see a bunch of amazing, beautiful artwork. And I was saying to Josh, like it has really grown leaps and bounds. Like when they first started, there were a couple of short films and you'd get like these glimpses of brilliant and then just not, and then
Right.
a lot of stuff that it was okay. But over the
Yeah.
years, like it's gotten really good. And we have this exciting community of people working on stuff. And I love it. I love that you're doing this.
Yeah,
It's so cool.
we saw Man of God here in Dallas, Texas. I think it was in March, maybe, to a sold out theater at North Park Mall in Dallas, Texas.
That's right.
That was mind blowing to me, and I knew like, oh, we have an audience for this, and I'm really excited about it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're right too, though, that it doesn't have to be just an Orthodox audience. Like, how nice for us to make art and to write books and to do things that are accessible to other people, that just share the beauties of our faith. And you know what?
Mm.
Maybe they'll be interested in becoming Orthodox. Maybe they won't. It's okay if they don't. Like, it would be just great for people to even have any idea what the heck we are.
Right,
We're
100%.
we're so invisible to the world right now. May that change. But I think you're absolutely right. I think there are only a handful of like really great Orthodox films, but I think Man of God came out and just the hunger for it and the interest in it and the way that Orthodox people all around the country were so excited to see it and to support it. I think you've got an audience that's really ready for this and excited about it.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I know for a fact, like whenever I saw Man of God, it really did give me the confidence of like, okay, like we're way ahead of the curve. And I think this is something that the way that we're going to film the movie, that it's something that like, I think art houses will love. I think people that love cinema will love. And they'll ask the question. It's almost what I think, which is kind of funny. It's almost like I'm making a foreign movie, but it's not. It's not a foreign film, but I think it's going to feel like one. And I love foreign films. So I think it's going to feel like a foreign film that's in everyone's backyard.
That's so cool. Well, and there is a foreignness to Orthodoxy for sure. And there's also that sense of like otherworldliness, right? There's foreign,
Mm.
and then there's abroad, there's Europe, right? And then there's also this like the kingdom breaking through kind of otherworldliness. And I think you're gonna have a little bit of that as well from it. But how do people find it? How like if somebody wanted to be one of those, God willing, 1,000 Orthodox or otherwise 1,000 art supporting humans who want to step in and help with this, how do they do it?
Yeah, there's several different ways that they can do that. I think one of the easiest ways, if you go to holyfulfilms.com, that'll guide you to it. Our website is El Tonto Por Cristo. If you're of the Spanish speaking, you can go that way. Also, joshdavidjordan.com will roll you through there. And there's different ways. And the cool thing about all of those different avenues that you can be a part of it, if you want to give $100 and invest an investment into El Tonto Por Cristo and then get money back and then get money for the life of the film, you can do that at holyfulfilms.com and also with the 501(c) as well. So there's no you don't have to give $1,000 or $100,000, which that would be great. But you can also, I think the minimum is like $100, and you can be a part of an Orthodox film that is going to be made.
That's
That's awesome.
It's really
Yeah.
neat. Well, and I love the idea of people like investing and then take those proceeds and reinvest them in the next film, right? And like the next one and the next one.
Yes.
And let's invest in our art, in beautiful Orthodox art to be out there.
Yes.
I love it. I think this is so neat, Josh. I'm very excited about it. I'm very
Oh,
fired up.
thank you so
What
much.
is your hope? Like, what would be the timeline ideally to be able to get going with
Yeah, I can break that down. So, I'm always a visionary. So I believe that this film will be fully funded and that we'll be shooting in February. I've always wanted to shoot a Texas film in the winter because I think Texas has a unique feeling. And I think this film needs to be shot in February. So if we all rally around and get this thing funded, we can shoot it in February, and then we'll roll right into editing. And after that, we'll be in prime time to submit this to film festivals like the Toronto Film Festival, Tribeca, Sundance, and South by Southwest, which I think this type of film is right up their alley. And to have a film like this be in those type of festivals to show orthodoxy in an artistic way is my vision, and I believe that will happen.
Oh, I love it, Josh. I love this. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight.
Thanks.
I'm super excited about it. Again, you guys, El Tonto Por Cristo or Holy Fools Film. Is it Holy Fool or Holy Fools
Yeah,
Film?
it's holyfoolfilms.com
Okay. Yeah, I get it
or
backwards.
joshdavidjordan.com.
All right,
Yeah,
cool. That's fantastic. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the program. I want you to come back after this film is made and we'll talk
of
all about
course.
how it went and all the crazy stories that happened and how the whole
Yes.
process was. That would be awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
It's been a great joy, Josh. Thank you so much.
All
And
right.
thank you to our audience for joining us. Come on back next Sunday night and we'll meet another everyday Orthodox Christian. Thanks very much, guys. Good night. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight on Everyday Orthodox. Up next, we have Father